Hi everyone, welcome back to Footprints and Wheels. My name is Justine and here's my husband. His name is Aaron, and today we'll be doing a conversation about the 10 or
AIDS, rather.
eight, eight things or eight challenges that persons with disabilities may face when traveling or going on a holiday vacation. We recently have been on a very interesting vacation, and there were a number of challenges that we came across. So we thought it would be very insightful, and it would give a lot of people more insight and knowledge on certain things to do with with disability, being an interabled couple, and having to deal with certain challenges that come with actually going on holiday and traveling with your partner. So we will first start. We'll start with the first challenge that we encountered. And the first challenge is usually accessible, buildings, accessible hotels. That's a great difficulty. So usually, when we travel, we do it through a travel agency. In South Africa, there are how many travel agencies?
There are quite a number. Some bogus and some reputable. So
Yeah.
you need to do your research and make sure that you get in touch with the right travel agency that won't rip you off and that has a good reputation. And yeah, basically, yeah, that's it really.
Yeah, so whenever you're choosing a travel agency, you always need to make sure that the travel agent knows exactly what your specifications are. Because sometimes you might think, checking Google reviews or just, going online and seeing what people have to say about the hotel is enough information for you. But usually you will find that, there are certain hurdles and challenges in the architecture of the actual, hotel that might impede a disabled person from even entering into the building, or it might require the help or the assistance of porters or other people in order for them to get inside the building or to access other areas within the building. So, accessibility, a very big factor, and that is the first thing that we always consider before we can accept any kind of hotel accommodation. Aaron is very, I would definitely say, flexible. He doesn't really mind if a place isn't fully accessible in that regard. He would be more comfortable if the place can be accessed, but to a certain extent, if that makes any sense. I don't know if you want to elaborate further on
Yes,
that.
and basically, what more importantly, your bathroom should be able to accommodate you as a wheelchair user, and not not all hotels are 100% wheelchair friendly. So you need to make sure that when you that requirement is met, particularly the bathroom and also your bed. You also need enough space for your wheelchair to move around and for your partner also to have space for her to maneuver, not being detained by one's wheelchair and so on.
Yeah, so the most important thing really is just having a very accessible bathroom, because the second a bathroom is inaccessible, then that means that whoever it is that's using the bathroom might not be able to even use it, to begin with. You find sometimes that certain bathrooms have very limited space, between the bathtub and the shower, and we did encounter that in one of our.
And there was also glass.
And there was also glass. So there are certain things that you need to consider. Is the place properly paved? You know, can the person access certain areas or not? If there's a dining area that's a little bit further off, will he be able to access that? Are there ramps available? And are the ramps also, easily, can a person in a manual wheelchair manage to get over those ramps? So those are very important things that you need to definitely consider whenever you are booking accommodation. And I would highly recommend using a travel agency and letting them know what your specifications are beforehand. That's a very important thing. So,
Yes,
yeah.
and another thing that you should also consider is transportation. You know, are you going to be using a bus when you get there? Are you going to be renting out a car? Are you flying out? And where do you, since you're always seated, do you have the right seat and positioning of the seat? You don't want to sit next to the toilet all the time. And yeah, things like that. And it also has to be spacious. Um, the people who transport you should know what they are doing, and yeah, be aware that you're a disabled person. So sometimes it's always good to let them know beforehand that you're traveling, and that your wheelchair needs to be included in that vehicle, and that the vehicle is big enough to accommodate your wheelchair and the like, and that you can also get in comfortably into and onto the seats. And if that's a problem, then you also need maybe extra staff or porters just to lift you and put you into the vehicle you're using.
So I remember we had a vacation once to Zimbabwe, and we had I think it was a boat ride. We were going to what was it again?
The Zambezi
The
River.
Zambezi River, and for us to actually get to be transported from the hotel, which was the Kingdom Hotel, all the way to the Zambezi River, we had to use a bus, and this a shuttle. No, it was a bus. Remember the bus that we had to take first?
Okay.
And they had to lift you because there was stairs in the bus, so they had to literally take him off his wheelchair and lift him up so that he could access the bus. Then from there they would put the wheelchair inside the bus. So these are things that
Even
can cause
even the cruise itself, the boat had
Yeah.
stairs.
So the same thing again with us getting onto the boat again, that was another picking up and also taking the wheelchair with.
And the dock was not all that wheelchair friendly, but they did improvise in the end.
Exactly. So it becomes very important to sort of consider, whether you're going to be assisted or not in a certain, situation. Is it accessible? Will it be, accessible enough for you to get on? Is it crowded? I know that a lot of wheelchair users in particular would much rather prefer a vehicle that does have a ramp on it, so as to ensure that there's not too many transfers in the process, because you don't want to be, transferring from your wheelchair into the vehicle, or from the vehicle onto the wheelchair, and so on and so forth. It expends a lot of energy. So it is important to consider that fact, and to consider, transportation at all times, just for comfort, and it becomes a great inconvenience sometimes when you don't have anybody to help you and you're trying to have a very good holiday. So that's quite important.
Moving on, you also need to travel to areas where it's very accessible in terms of pavements and sidewalks.
Yeah.
Because at times you wanna push yourself or will yourself in town or at a market. So beforehand, you have to make sure that which area you're going to, it's well paved and that you can easily access it. Be it a market,
A beach.
and so on. So yeah, those are some of the things you need to also take into account.
Yeah, so research is very important in that respect, reading about it beforehand, and trying to find out as much information as you can. If there's enough, paving around the area, are you able to access tourist attractions, and so on and so forth. So most beaches in on the African continent, or the beaches that I've been to, don't really provide that paving, in onto the beach, or a sort of accessibility for you to get onto a dock and then be able to see the beach at a closer view. But I guess that's something that will be accommodated at a later stage. It might
Yeah,
happen.
however, they are, for those who can afford, but they come at a price. They are
The wheelchairs, the special wheelchairs,
wheelchair,
yeah.
special wheelchairs that one can use at the beach, but they got very big wheels, and for you to go with it to the beach is a bit of a hassle. I hate
What
to
was that?
swallow.
Okay, so the next thing is transfers. Transfers are very important. You need to always consider transfers, because my husband can definitely tell you about this aspect, is that it takes a lot of energy, and I've seen it myself through being with him for many years. We've been together for five years, and so I've seen a lot of transfers happening, before my very eyes. So it's very important that you choose the right transportation agency. Choose people who are able to help you if you need help. And yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think, yeah.
and also at airports, when you're moving from one flight to the other, it can be very stressful and straining, because sometimes the first one in and the last one to get out of the plane, and then you have to wait for your wheelchair to come in. Sometimes, like our safari, my wheelchair,
He names
I
his wheelchair Safari, yeah.
so yeah, so safari had quite a knocking. So yeah, you have to have that emotional stamina to deal with all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, in the airports, mostly the aisles are very narrow, incredibly narrow, and narrow to the point where you cannot fit a standard wheelchair into the aisle. So what they will usually do is they will allocate a special wheelchair which is narrow enough
To take you to your seat.
to take you into your seat. But from there, for example, if you've got an electric wheelchair, you have to leave it behind, because of the batteries that power the wheelchair.
And then they'll take it to the cargo.
Yeah, so they'll take it to the cargo, and yeah, that's basically it. So these kinds of things are obviously, you know, very important things, and these are the challenges that a lot of disabled people face. So, I think the most important thing is just to lobby for change as well. To try and find better ways to accommodate people with disabilities. And another thing that I would like to raise, and I think this is the fifth thing, is terrain. Terrain can be a great challenge depending on where you're going. If you're going to a beachy area, for example, sea sand on an electric wheelchair or a manual wheelchair is a big, 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 big hassle. Your wheels can easily get stuck inside the sand. You might not be able to move around, or in grass. They're different terrains.
Some wet and some dry.
Some wet and some dry.
And
So it's always important to sort of choose a wheelchair and it all depends on your spending abilities. If you've got the resources to actually purchase these kinds of wheelchairs. But terrain is a very frustrating thing. It can be incredibly frustrating to travel on a grassy terrain, or have a hotel that simply does not accommodate for paving, or concrete, in order for a wheelchair to move around. So yeah, I mean, if you are, a hotel or whatever, that would be a very important thing for you to consider, whether or not a person with disabilities can move around. And yeah.
another thing is pricing. Normally, to have an accessible apartment or room, it comes at an extra price, because it's more spacious and there are a lot of assistive devices in there. So yeah, you should also take cognizance of that. That for you to have a room that's adapted to your needs, it's slightly more expensive than a normal room or a room that doesn't accommodate a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an expense that we have to deal with. And
Drawing from our own experiences, I mean, we've had a number of experiences where we went to a hotel in Bumalanga, for example, where it was not an issue. You know, we arrived there, we made a booking and everything, and we thought it was going to be an accessible room, but there were stairs, many impediments which did not accommodate a person with wheelchair using a wheelchair at all. So we had to just take it to hotel management, and they immediately came up with a solution for us, and they got us a fairly accessible room. So there are certain hotels that are willing to accommodate, and one of the things I don't understand is why you even need to tell hotel staff that it should be a wheelchair accessible place. You know,
yeah,
I feel like it should just be something that everything should be wheelchair accessible, because what it does is essentially discriminates against people with disabilities. You know, you can't have a certain room because it has certain stairs and all that kind of stuff. So it's quite important to note this very important thing. Did you want to say something? I think you had a point.
Oh, I wanted to say not all. I mean, some hotels might not be in a position to accommodate you when you reach there, because you might find that they are fully booked and already you've been confined to this room where you cannot move. So
Yeah.
yeah, you should also always emphasize that.
Yeah, we also experienced quite recently actually where we had to pay an additional fee, by virtue of my husband being in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So that's a very challenging thing, trying to find the right kind of accommodation and taking account all the factors that we've had to list so far. The next thing, which I think is probably the most important thing, is definitely ableism. And if you guys don't know what ableism is, we will leave a little description of what ableism means on the screen here. And it's basically just discrimination of persons with disabilities, and it's usually from able-bodied people. And these discriminations come in different factors. For example, accessibility, attitude towards disabled people,
and some are not patient. They just want you out of the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, you need to be very emotionally strong.
In another story time where a very serious incident happened to Safari, which is my husband's wheelchair, there was a sort of big thing that had happened, and part of it was because of ableism. And it was you were sitting in a queue, and but we'll definitely make another sort of vlog or story time about that, just to explain to you guys what exactly happened in that particular instance.
Yes, and moving on to the last point, the eighth one, which is mobility.
Mobility, it's very important in that, some people are not able to afford certain wheelchairs. For example, an electric wheelchair could cost around about 3,000 US dollars, which is 30,000 rand, and this is like maybe a starting price. There are some that cost less, maybe 1,500 US dollars, which is 15,000 rand in South Africa. And most people will only have a manual wheelchair, which is something that can cause a great difficulty when you're trying to travel and go to places that have different terrains. For example, if it's steep and if there's a downward slope, and you're on a manual wheelchair, it might be very difficult. So pricing factors, it becomes very hard to kind of find a wheelchair that might make sense for you, considering your budget and how or where you would like to travel. So that's a
Yeah, that's something you need to
that's
consider.
something it's something you really do need to consider. I mean, it's quite difficult traveling around in a manual wheelchair, you know, and so it would really be great to see, you know, government allocating more people with electrical wheelchairs. I think this is the day and age to start considering people with disabilities more. So, yeah, this is just to sort of educate, to inform, and let people know what the various challenges are when traveling with disabilities. I think we've sort of given you guys a brief overview of what kind of things you need to consider in that respect. And yeah, we're very big activists for, you know, persons with disabilities, and we'd like to see a lot of changes happening, particularly around, you know, your hotels and your resorts, where we can see a lot of changes happening. And yeah, we'd just like to empower a lot of people to sort of fight for that change and make the world more able for disabled people. So I don't know if you have anything more to say.
Please share and subscribe. By sharing, you also help to raise awareness, and some people might benefit from this video.
Yeah. So don't forget to like, comment, share, and
Subscribe.
okay, this is Footprints and Wheels. It was nice having this chat with you guys.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.